Alright guys, welcome to NextGenRugga. So as promised, we're going to be looking at the top 10 first teams of the last decade. So that's from 2010 to 2019. Now remember, I can only choose one team from a school. So basically what that means is that I would only choose one team from Grey College, one team from PAARL boys, etc., etc. The purpose for this was not to stack the entire team full of teams from 3 to 4 schools, but rather to spread it out a bit. If you are new to the channel, please don't forget to click that subscribe button as well as bell notification. And as soon as new videos are released, you will be the first to know. So let's get straight into the top 10. In 10th place, we have the KEARSNEY class of 2013. Now, this team only lost one match in that year, and that was to a very rampant PAARL gym team. They lost that game 6-33, but as you can see, completely dominant in terms of the Natal League. Did have a tight win over Glenwood 26-25, but besides that, I mean, big scores against a lot of their traditional rivals. They had, like mentioned, just the one loss out of the 17 games, 560 points, 446 against, with an average score of 33 points to 9. Two SA Schools players, the Dupree twins, Jean-Luc and Dan. Tristan Tedder was also a key player in that team. A lot of people have asked me why I haven't included the Dupree twins in a lot of my squads. Do I not rate them? I rate them incredibly highly. I think they're some of the most talented loose forwards on the planet, not just the country. I'm just not sure they're going to be shown much love by the South African rugby administrators for now in the next couple of years. But we'll see what happens ultimately. But this KEARSNEY team had to be included because, frankly, it was one of the best teams in the history of the school. And 2013 was, as you will see later on in the video, a massive year for South African schools rugby. So moving on to 9th place, we have Monument, the class of 2017. So 20 games played, 18 wins with the 2 losses, 768 points for, 312 against, an average score of 38-16. Shockingly, only one SA Schools player that year, which was Mornay branded, but they still had Tinus Combrink, Mark Snamer and Stefan Leroux that were key players. You'll see the 2 losses there were to Boland Landbou by 2 points and Alderaan by 5 points. But beside that, very good wins this year. For example, strong win against a strong Selborne team, 19-12. Beating WATERKLOOF 2017, Glenwood 30-19, thrashing Yechia Janssen, Florida, Nelspruit, schools like that, beating Gasfontein very comfortably. I think the problem that ends up happening with a lot of the northern schools, particularly around the Vol areas, they just play too many games in a season. They play the traditional fixtures and then they play in the Versierkerbeek, or as was known, the Beale Trophy. So that ends up resulting in them getting fatigue, and what ends up happening is they end up losing matches they shouldn't really lose. But I saw this team play. I followed them quite closely, and to me, one of the best teams I saw in the last decade, and in my opinion, no doubt deserved their place, and I definitely think deserved a few more SA Schools players in this team. Very good team. Moving on, we have at 8th place WATERKLOOF, the class of 2011. So they had 17 games played, 15 wins with just the 2 losses. Those losses were to Grey College. I mean, Grey College had an excellent team this year, and they only lost by 5 points. Then a surprise 12-point loss to Monument, but they did get revenge for that, 60 points to 5. And you take a look at that, guys. Beating Porus 48-10, Gasfontein 62-12, Diamantval 55-15. I mean, that Transvalia 74-17. I mean, they had a very, very strong year. 4 SA Schools players produced. 854 points for and 249 against, an average score of 50 points to 15. Key players in that team were Mornay Coetzee, Mornay du Plessis, Ernay Herbst, who went on to go play pro rugby, and Sean Robertson, also another gifted player. So definitely one of the better WATERKLOOF teams, probably their best team since their dream team of 2006. And the thing with WATERKLOOF and Menlo Park and some of the Bulls schools is that they generally are very strong in a national context. They are strong schools. But when they have a dream team, they have a dream team. I mean, you take a look at WATERKLOOF, you take a look at Menlo Park. If they produce an excellent team, it's going to be top 5 in the country, no doubt. And in 2011, it was definitely one of their stronger teams, no doubt about it. Then next up, we have in 7th place, OUTENIQUA 2013. Oh, what a gifted team this was. And they should have been higher than 7th place. But the problem is the two losses they had, and we'll talk about this team a bit later, the PAARL team of 2013. So they had those two losses, 25-37 and 10-16. I think in any other year, like just an average year, I think these guys could have comfortably been number one. It was literally a dream team. I mean, look at that, guys. Beating PAARL boys 45-36. They beat Grey College 22-20. As I recall, it's one of the only times they've ever beaten Grey College. 48-15 against Grey High. St. Joseph's in the UK came over on tour, 61-5. And they're not a weak school. But take a look at some of those other scores, guys. I mean, Fransby 52-16. Noordkaap 36-23, who were strong that year. Daniel Pienaar were not a weak team that year, 45-5. So this was an unbelievable team. You can see the average score is 44-14, 788 points for and 265 against. 4 SS Schools players. And Duan van der Merwe and Warwick Galant played SS Schools for 2 years. They played in 2012 and 2013, and they formed the core of that backline. So back then, Galant was actually a centre and van der Merwe was still a wing. So can you imagine what they unleashed on the school scene back in those days? Other key players, Remy Milan was one of the best schoolboy players you would have ever seen. This guy just had so much talent. Dierwald Heeman was amazing. Dian Kuhn was amazing. Edward Zandberg was amazing. I could put the whole starting 15 this year as key players, but these guys were just another level. And unfortunately, they played one of the best ever PAARL teams. But like I said, an average year, I think they would have been number one. And if they did manage to get a number one ranking, I certainly would have had them much higher up in this list. Next up, we have at 6th place Glenwood, the class of 2018. And this will cause some controversy, especially with Glenwood Old Boys, but we'll go ahead. So they had played 17 games that season, won 16, drew 1, unbeaten season, 748 points for and 202 against. SS Schools players produced were 4, and those were the key players I put down. You had Tabiso Mdletshe, Lunga Ncube, Jaden Hendrickson, Reinhard Jonker. And you can see just the one draw that year, which was against Grey College, who were unbeaten that year as well. Now, if you take a look at how they started their season, pretty well. But once they sort of, just after the World Schools Festival, they really hit their stride. I mean, they completely decimated their KZN opposition. Had a tight win over a good AFFIES team. Then all of a sudden, they decimated Monument, and Monument weren't bad that year. Came back to the KZN area and completely dominated. And they were very unlucky to lose that game against Grey College. It was a tight one. And you ask any Glenwood boy that was there that day, that was their game. You ask any Grey boy, and it was their game. But it was played at Glenwood. And then the final game of the season, a big win against WATERKLOOF, 39-15. And these guys, especially Hendrickson, to me, Hendrickson has the potential to be one of the best scrum halves in the world one day. Jonker's an unbelievable player. Ncube is definitely an unbelievable player. And Mdletshe is just going from strength to strength. So these guys will be remembered for a very long time. And I think quite a few Glenwood old boys are definitely going to argue with me about this list and insist they should be higher, especially because of my next pick on the list. And it'll definitely cause some controversy with the Glenwood boys. But I have to say that first place, ROOS, the class of 2018. And the first thing the Glenwood boys are going to say is, but come on, they weren't unbeaten. And fair enough, but let me explain my reasoning for this. 15 games played, 14 games won, 1 loss, and an average score of 53-15 for SA Schools players. What I want you to think about here, guys, the last game of the season, okay, a loss to Grey College, 26-28. But please just take a look at that before. Look at the early part of the season. Fine, Lions, Nelspruit, Daniel Pienaar, Sachs, not the strongest schools that year. Grey High weren't bad, 43-8. Menlo Park, WATERKLOOF got decimated. Then they came to the Western Cape, 32-13 against PAARL, virtually unheard of. Bishops, 44-21, who weren't a bad team. Then PAARL boys, guys, think about that, 44 points to 8. When was the last time you saw that happen? Oakdale weren't bad that year, 42-21. They came to the southern suburbs, decimated Wynberg, Rondebosch, and They easily beat a Boland Landbou team that was also very, very good that year. Now, the interesting thing about the Grey College game is that they were missing their 4 SA schools players. However, Grey College were missing 3 of their own. I do understand that. But you've got to take it in context. The foundation of the greatness of this team was in their front row, I believe. With Hanro Jacobs and JJ Kotze, they had one of the best, if not the best, front row in the country. Like I can't explain to you how dominant these guys were. You got to go back and look at footage of Hanro Jacobs and JJ Kotze. Robbie Rogers is also part of that squad. You got to take a look at what this front row did to other front rows. You've never seen anything like it in school rugby. It was absolutely unreal. It laid all the foundation because PAARL boys had a strong pack. I mean, you had Evan Roos in there, you had Van Heerden in there, you had some big boys in there, but they still couldn't handle this poor Roos pack. They were absolutely dominant that year. And then you had Mostert and Brendan Fenter in the back line that were causing all sorts of havoc. And then in the junior ranks, Kate Volhitter was at fullback, and Jared Kearns was a loose forward. You look at those key players and look at those names, guys. If you know anything about school rugby, those are exceptional school rugby players. And I do believe, and grey guys aren't going to like me for saying this, but I really do believe, had they not lost their SA schools players, they would have beaten Grey College. I really do believe they would have beaten Grey College comfortably. I think 10 to 15 points. And Achenbach was a fantastic prop, don't get me wrong. But Hanro Jacobs and JJ Kotze, I can't see a front row that would have taken them on, not even the Grey College front row of that year. And with that combination, and with losing Mostert and Brendan Fenter, that's another combination that's hard to lose, because that's a 10-12 dynamic over there. So they were missing combinations and key players in that last game. And I gave Grey College the number 1 ranking in South Africa that year because they did win this game. But look at those results. Just look at those early season results. And I'm telling you now, that was the foundation of that was laid right at the front, because Hanro and JJ completely took away the opportunity for any momentum and any chance for the backs of their opposition to getting a quality ball. It was absolutely amazing to see. So the reason why I've got them ahead of Glenwood is because, yes, Glenwood drew to Grey and poor Roos lost to Grey, but look at the difference in quality. Glenwood didn't play PAARL boys that year. Glenwood didn't play PAARL Gym that year. So you don't know what would have happened if they had played those type of schools. Anything could have happened, and Glenwood were a fantastic school, but the reality is they didn't play these schools. And to me, that's a big reason why I can't for the life of me rank Glenwood above poor Roos in that context. So that's why they're in this place. And I think I've given this a lot of explanation. And leave your comment below if you disagree, and let's see if there's some sort of compromise we can come to. Who knows? Next, we have 4th place PAARL Gym 2013. I've talked about this team a few times already in this video. And this must go down as one of their best ever teams. 24 games, long season, 23 wins and the 1 draw. The draw was against Oakdale. And just so much quality in this team. 851 points for 229 against, 35-10 average, 4 SA schools players produced. And in terms of key players, I mean, J.D. Schikkeling, a fantastic player, Jacques Vermeulen, fantastic player, Grant Amanis, amazing, Jaco Willemse, great. And I'll leave the Rickers Bortma last on that list over there, and definitely not least. I'd like to know what happened to this guy, because I really believe that by now he would have been a Springbok. Really, there was no other 8th man in the history of school rugby that comes close to this guy's level. He was one of the top try scorers in the country as an 8th man. The real speciality of this team, however, was their defence. Now, they played entertaining rugby, they played great rugby, don't get me wrong, but the physicality in the defence was unreal, and you can see it in that average score. They only conceded an average of 10 points per game, which is very different to a lot of other all-star teams. And you take a look at the PAARL Derby, generally that game is decided by inches, and on this particular year it was a 37-26 win. And just like I said, like the 1 draw against Oakdale, 17-all. But besides that, very much dominant in the country. And yeah, it's another controversial one because I've got another team from the same year who's on my list just ahead of them. And this again will cause arguments, but I'll do my best to explain as I always do. And we move on to third place, AFFIES 2013. So how is it possible that any team could have been better than the 2013 PAARL team, you have to ask yourself. The difference to me is purely the fact that they played Grey College and they beat them 37-31. It was a lot more comfortable than this suggests. I think the game is available on YouTube. You just got to search for it. You got to see how dominant this AFFIES team were. They only played 14 games, won all 14, but they scored 579 points for and 181 against. Produced 4 SA Schools players. They had Francois Steyn, definitely not the one you're thinking of. Obviously, Ochje Snyman, a World Cup winner, was in that team. Yuri Linde, who I don't know how he didn't become like a Springbok basically. He could have been a Springbok by now if you take a look at his talent at school level. Played SA Schools 2 years. Edwin Cater, he was part of the squad, but he played SA Schools the year after. And then finally you got Ivan van Sail. And van Sail was another guy that became a Springbok. So you're talking about a very special team here. And also just take a look at the scores. Queens were strong that year, 27-13. Did away with them with ease. Kes weren't bad that year, 46-6. Beating one of Jeppy's good teams, 36-18. Like I said, Grey College 37-31. Glenwood 53-23. Pretoria Boys 50-12. Maritzburg 51-10. Just one tight game against WATERKLOOF 19-18. But you can understand what I'm saying here, guys. I think if these guys in PAARL had to have played that year, I do think AFFIES would have snuck in over there. And like the whole thing is, you can't really call yourself a national champion unless you've beaten Grey College in a particular year. And PAARL didn't play Grey College that year, and it was a fantastic team. It was an absolutely amazing PAARL team. But I can't put them I can't put them ahead of AFFIES purely based on the fact that they didn't take on Grey College. I think if you want to say you are number one in the country, you actually have to have played Grey College in that particular year. I think that's just like an unspoken rule in South African school rugby. So that's why I've got AFFIES at third place, just ahead of PAARL. Then we move on to the final two. So in second place, PAARL Boys, the class of 2016. And, what a team this was. 18 wins from 18 games. 624 for, 238 against, with an average score of 35-13. 8 SA Schools players. Think about that, guys. 8 SA Schools players. If you include that Franco Horn played South Africa A, that's basically 9 national players they had that year. And what a year it was for them. Salman Murad led from the front. You had Poseidon and Neetling at prop. You had Jooste at hooker, so you basically had you had an SA Schools front row right there. Gianni Lombard was amazing. Money Ross was amazing. This was a very, very amazing team, and you can see in the scores. Look what they did to their western neighbours, Bishops and Wynberg, 58-12 and 48-7. Beating Grey College 28-18, which doesn't happen often. Look at that poor risk score, 28-3. Very, very amazing scores over there. PAARL 26-25, very tight game over there. Then finishing off the season with a 52-15 win over Drosti. But what a team this was. And it was so hard because the 2015 team was great. The 2017 team was great as well. But this team on paper was just something unreal. And I think the thing is that if you take a look at the results, perhaps not as dominant as other dream teams, so to speak. We looked at some of the other results, and you could see that there were some big scores, especially like Poor's 2018. But it was just the execution of these guys. I remember them very well, and a lot of their footage is on YouTube if you want to take a look. I remember them very well, and it was like there were some games even where you thought to yourself, like, it doesn't look like they're going to pull through, and they always managed to pull through. It doesn't look like they're going to pull through in the PAARL Derby, for example, but they pulled through. I think it was down to Murat's leadership, but also just the sheer talent that they had. And I think because of the amount of talent that they had, that every game was going to be hard, because all opposition knew that this was going to be the game that they were going to target. So the target is normally on Grey College's back, but I think during this period, the mid-2010s, the target was firmly on the back of the boys from PAARL. And it was very hard not to put them in number one place. But the thing is, my number one place is, again, I think will be quite a controversial pick. Obviously, you guys know it's a great college team, but what great college team? Because there were some great college teams in the last decade. And yeah, I took a long think about this, and finally I settled on the class of 2019. So yeah, I know I'm going to get some arguments here because the 2010 team was exceptional, 2011 team was exceptional, a lot of exceptional teams, but there was just something so special about this team in my mind, and I think it was one of the best school rugby teams ever produced in the country. I think the thing is what's going to end up happening with this team is we're only going to really appreciate in the next 5 to 6 years how good they really were. Because whereas the other schools, I mean, you take a look at 2013, for example, AFFIES and PAARL never played each other. You know what I mean? So, and you take a look at, Glenwood's team. They never played ROOS. They never played, any of the PAARL schools, for example. This was one of those unique years where they basically played everyone that was possible to play. I mean, if this was a national league, they basically played the schools that were ranked from second to say seventh, and they beat them easily. That was the thing. It was the ease. They only just had the one tough game against Selborne, but that was purely down to Coach Nomlomo's genius. But besides that, I mean, putting 47 points on the board against Jim, 43 points on the board against PAARL boys, record scores against AFFIES, record score against ROOS. If you take a look at their last couple of games, guys, I mean, just take a look at that. Okay, so start from AFFIES, for example. That's 50, 63, 58, 50, 57, 51. And those schools are AFFIES, WATERKLOOF, Greyhound, Glenwood, Oakdale, and ROOS, powerhouse schools. And look what they did. So you got an average score of 53-19, 909 points in the season, 321 against. And sorry about the error there. There wasn't 8 SA Schools players they produced. They produced 3 SA Schools players, and that was Jan-Hendrik Wessels, George Crenier, and Andre Venter. But the key players as well was Ian Small-Smith. I think he'll go down as a great college legend in terms of his game. Marcel Muller, I mean, this channel introduced you all to Marcel Muller, basically. Well, let's just put it this way. Marcel Muller introduced himself to this channel with his talent, and we basically introduced him to the world. What an exceptional player. What an exceptional player. And he's going to go very far. You've got Tian Jonker, humble guy, works hard, super talented. You got FC Du Plessis, one of the best flow-offs I've seen over the last decade. Franco Knutzer, who's going to have an exceptional rugby career in front of him. You've got Danush Bierkes, who's, if he stays in France, could end up becoming a French international. But those names over there that you're reading, all of them should be playing at the very least high-level professional rugby. And more than half of those guys, I do believe, will go on to play international rugby. I do believe that. And I think a lot of them will be in the reckoning for the South African under-20 team next year. And like I said, I think we're only going to truly appreciate how exceptionally talented this team was in a couple of years when they start making their mark on the world. And then we'll look back and we'll say, yeah, that Jan-Hendrik Wessels, what an amazing players. And look at that George Crenier, look at that Small-Smith, look at that Muller, look at all these guys, look at Andre Venter, look at this exceptional talent, and they're all from Grey. And then we're going to say, hell, they came from the same year. That must have been a great team. And then you'll come back and you'll look at these results and you'll say, this was a legendary team. And that's why I have to put them in my number one position with the team for the last decade. And it was very hard because there's a lot of fantastic teams. But to me, as of right now, it's between them and the 2007 team, in my opinion, who could go down as like the best ever South African schools team. Very exceptional group. And like I said, just give it 5 or so years, time goes quick, and then we'll truly appreciate their talent. So thanks a lot for taking the time to watch this, guys. Next time we're going to be going over a South Coast Kings Dream Team. So get your votes in, head over to www.nextgenrugga.com and cast your vote, and we'll be announcing the team on Friday. So thanks a lot for watching again, and have a fantastic week further as always. Cheers. Bye.